Hey everybody, this is Tom from VermiBag. This is the VermiBag Tote 1. We started the migration process on this last week and been watching it kind of throughout the week. I haven't added any addition of food to it. That's pretty good, and the worms are doing a good job separating coming out of it. And I could probably leave it for another week, and I think I'd be able to pull castings out of the center again with probably hardly any worms at all in them. But I kind of want to do something different. I kind of wanted to get some cocoons. So the material in there doesn't have too many worms, and we'll zoom in here and I'll show you. So what I'd like to do today is go ahead and pull the center section out and go ahead and sift it through. This is like a 3/16 sieve, and then I have a smaller, just over a 1/16 inch sieve that I can get the cocoons out of. So, and that way the large worms and stuff will stay pretty much in this larger sieve, and I'll just dump them back into the system. And then the stuff I collect in this container here, I'll run it through that second sieve. We'll pull some cocoons out of this thing and see what kind of reproduction rate we're getting inside this bag and see how many cocoons are in this thing. So I'll pull in a little bit closer, I'll show you what the bag looks like, and then we'll set this thing up. Okay, let's take a look inside Tote 1 and see what it looks like. You can see the material here is well worked over in the center. There's still been definitely doing a little bit of activity in it, and I definitely see a few worms here and there in it. But that's to be expected. I mean, as many worms that were in this system, I'd be utterly surprised if most of them were out of here in just 7 days. I mean, I'm definitely finding worms in here. They're scattered around, but they aren't real thick by any means. On the side areas here, there's definitely some thick worm activity on the sides. So I'd say a big chunk of the worms have actually migrated over to the sides. And if I wanted to leave this center section for, another week, I'd probably get a pretty good chunk of these worms out of here. Like I dig through there, and there aren't that many. In all reality, I dig down, there's an occasional one here and there. But compared to the sides, it's actually looking pretty good. So what I want to do, the consistency of this center is really nice. So it's a perfect time to do actually a cocoon separation. I'm a little bit curious on what kind of production I'm getting in here, if there's that many cocoons in this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this material here and put it into that 3/16 inch sieve and sieve it out, and that way I'll be able to get most of the worms, and I'll dump the worms back in here. The material I get from that, I'm going to go ahead and run through a smaller sieve that's right around a 1/16 of an inch, and that'll hold the cocoons, and we'll look through that and see how many cocoons we're getting in this thing. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so again what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull the material out of the center section here, run it through this larger sieve, and then just place it over into this other container right here. All the worms that I get out of here, rather than dump them back in here right now, any worms that are left over and larger debris, I'm going to dump into this container right here, and then I'll eventually put this back into the system. I don't know if you can see in there. I mean, most of the worms actually get caught in this, so there's a few worms in there and a few larger chunks, but for the most part almost everything went through. So I'll go ahead and dump that into this container and continue on. The material that's on the top here is much drier, and it sieves through really easily. The stuff that's down a little bit deeper is a little more moist, so it's a little bit more difficult to get it to run through the sieve. And I'll do this in smaller sections, the stuff that's a little bit more moist. this bottom section, if I wanted to, I could let this sit just a little, agitate it up like this here and let it sit a day or so and it'd dry out just enough that it'd go through the sieve better. But I don't want to wait, so I'll go ahead and sift it through this way, and not all of it's going to go through there, so I'm going to end up with a little bit more material in the reject pile over here with the worms than I would normally. But really, there's not too much that's coming through there. Great. Okay, we'll zoom in a little bit closer. We'll take a look at the finished castings here. Now, normally this would be castings that I would put on the garden, but I want to take this one more step and screen this and see how many cocoons I can get out of this section. And then I'll also show you the bin here that has the reject material and the worms in it, which there isn't too much there actually. So let me reposition the camera a little bit so we can see both of these. You can tell here the intersection of the bin is completely gone now. So once we're done with all this, and we'll reset this system. I'll get it out of the way for right now. Okay, this is the material that I'd call the reject material, that stuff that didn't pass through the 3/16 inch screen. And you can see here there's a few worms here and there. You zoom in a little bit closer, you can see the contents of it. So there's definitely some worms in here, but I mean, considering how many are in that system, there really aren't that many. I mean, and there's not that much material here. There might be a total of 12 cups or something like that, maybe a gallon. There's about a gallon, I suppose, of material. But a lot of this is the bigger chunks of paper. You can see some sprouts and stuff, skins. And then, of course, there's worms mixed in there. And if I had actually let this dry out, that bottom section dry out a little bit, I would have gotten a lot more of this material to actually go through the screen, the finished casting screen. But it's a little bit moist to go through there right now. And again, since I didn't want to wait, so I'd say realistically, if I'd done it right and went ahead and took a little extra time, I could have got rid of at least half of this volume. Let's take a look at the finished castings that we got and see what they look like. These are nice. I mean, very, very rich material. And that's basically just 4 weeks of composting with the worms and 1 week to separate the worms out. That ain't bad. It really isn't. And this is a lot of casting. This is one full tray. There's at least 4 gallons here probably. Hardly any worms. I see an occasional one here and there, but no, I'm real happy with this. Now I'm hoping this material isn't too moist to go through the that screen that I have that's just a little over 1/16 of an inch. We'll give it a try. If it is too moist, I'll probably let this sit for a week. After Thanksgiving, I get back up for Thanksgiving and I'll try separating them then, but we'll give it a shot and see what it looks like. Because again, I mean, the material is really nice. But this is, you know, if you wanted, this is the finished product right now. Screen castings, put them on your garden. I could store this like normal. But I want to see how many cocoons I get out of this thing. So let me set that up. Okay, this is the screen I have for getting cocoons. And it's actually a office container. You can see it's actually just stuffed down inside this plastic tote that I have. And it sticks out just a little bit. It's kind of unfortunate because it doesn't run smoothly on my little base piece here. But it works well enough that I can use it. But this actually works pretty good. And this is about just a smidgen over 1/16 of an inch on the mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and take materials from here, the screen castings, place them in here, go ahead and sift them out, And all my cocoons and larger material will stay inside here, and all the finer stuff will pass through into the bottom. And then all the material here with the cocoons in it, I'll put it in another container here, and then we'll take a look at it after we get done with some of it. I'll try and do this small amount at a time. Working quite as well as I want. A lot of materials retaining in there, so let's see if I can find any drier stuff here. Maybe even do with a finer, smaller amount in there. Or a little better. I'll put it here. Okay, it's not working as well as I want because this material is just a little bit too damp to go through this smaller sieve. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to let this sit for a week or so and put a newspaper over the top of it and let it dry out just a little bit. I'll try and come in here every once in a while and turn it a little bit. And then once it dries out again, I'm going to go ahead and sieve some more. Let's pull over the ones I did the sifting on and separate it, and let's see if we can find any cocoons in there. Okay, I've been sifting through this just a little bit just to see what I can find. And I mean, there are quite a few cocoons mixed within this stuff. My eyes are getting not as good as they used to be. But if you take a little bit of time, sift through it, I mean, there's quite a few cocoons in through this area. So it'd be a lot easier to go ahead and let this material dry out just a little bit more, because then there won't be quite as much material. It'll be easier to see the cocoons. But, you know, I found all these just in a matter of about 4 minutes here, just kind of going through the material on here with this little brush, and different stages. I mean, you got one right there that is a little bit darker, and you got one that's a little bit yellow, and there's a couple in here that are just a dark brown, meaning that they're, you know, getting ready to hatch. I don't know where they're at now. I've lost them. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll keep that container with all the castings covered with a newspaper, and then just let it dry out for the next couple weeks. Then I may try sifting it again just to see how many cocoons I can get out of this. But there's definitely quite a few cocoons. This is just a little small section of what's in there. And there's 20 or 30 of them right here. And I've gone through about half this material. There's another one right here, I just say. Yeah, so they're definitely reproducing in here, getting a lot of cocoons. Overall, again, I'm real happy. You can't beat it for 1 week doing a separation and only getting, you know, that chunk of worms that I pulled out of there, which isn't that very many. So, and I got a good full tray full of really nice castings here. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with the system. It was able to give me, you know, a large amount of castings just in 1 week of separation. And this is basically just 4 weeks of processing with the worms, and then 1 week to separate. And I'm able to get, you know, at least 4 gallons here. This is the amount I screened out. It has my worms in it. And again, I could have cut this down a lot if I just let it go another week, but I want to get this video out, and I'm kind of in a hurry right now. So I'll throw this material back in the system, and when I reset the system. And then this is the small amount of castings that I went ahead and sifted just for some cocoons. And there's a lot of cocoons in there. It's hard to see them sometimes. Like I said, they'll be right in front of you, and then all of a sudden they pop out. But from this little thing, I was able to find 20 or 30 cocoons fairly quickly. So I'm sure there's a heck of a lot more than that in there. So I think I'll probably go back onto a little more realistic cycle on VermiBag Tote 1. I'm not going to push it, you know, for a 4-week cycle, but just to show you could do that. In 4 weeks, those worms were able to process through that material and produce some really nice castings. So that's all for this week. This is Tom from VermiBag. Till next week, ciao.